EP Magazine's annual autism acceptance issue features 15-year-old Irish magician Cillian O'Connor who struggles with dyspraxia, as well as social and sensory challenges due to his autism. Through therapy and his discovery of magic, he has been able to compete on America's Got Talent and other shows. Additional articles and resources on ASD appear in this edition at www.epmagazine.com.
Oscar Mike Radio is a proud podcast partner of Reach Across America Radio, heard every Thursday at 11 a.m. and Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern. They're also big supporters of the nonprofit I Got Your Six, Two Lives at Once. And with every wreath you sponsor through Oscar Mike Radio, $5 goes back to this great organization dedicated to making a difference in the lives of veterans, law enforcement, firefighters, and first responders battling PTSD. Two Lives at Once pairs these brave men and women together with dogs rescued from kill shelters. In this way, two lives are saved at the same time by saving each other. Donate now. Go to reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio to help. That's reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio.
Suicide is preventable, and each of us has a role to play in suicide prevention.
Suicide is complex. There is no single cause.
And it's not always a mental health issue. It could be loss of a job or home, financial or relationship issues, pain, or leaving the military.
Suicide does not discriminate. It affects all ages, races, and genders, veterans or not.
If you know a veteran who is struggling, connect with them. Let them know help is available.
There is quick and easy access to services in times of crisis.
Dial 988, then press 1. Talking about it is okay.
Don't keep it inside. Don't be ashamed. Don't wait. Reach out.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Hello and welcome again to Oscar Mike Radio. My name is Travis. I'm a Marine Corps veteran and your host. Oscar Mike Radio is part of the Hubazoo Network. You can find out more on hubazoo.com. I want to thank my sponsors, Joyce Asack of Asack Real Estate, Army National Guard veteran Mark Holmes of Reapers Detailing and Power Washing, and my supporters, Kason Shaving Company, Exceptional Parent Magazine, and Black Cat Designs. I love these kind of conversations we're going to have next, where someone who's talked with me or I've talked with somebody they know gives me a through word of mouth and just conversation, somebody else to talk with. And so I want to, say thank you to my dear friend Paula Ann from Ablaze Entertainment for connecting me with my next guest, who's just an amazing American. You're going to love hearing from her. Dr. Pamela Arnell, welcome to Oscar Mike Radio. What a pleasure to be speaking with you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So again, Paula, I were talking. She's like, "Hey, I've got, I know Pam. I know you love talking with her. She's a really great lady, and I just enjoy getting to know her. And so, check her out and tell me what you think." And I'm like, Paula, yeah, we definitely got to have her on because you're with 22-0, Healing the Hero. And we're going to get to that. But before we get to that and all the good stuff, kind of tell us your background, because you didn't serve in the military, but you have a long career of healing, clinical study, and education that is quite impressive, Doctor. Thank you.
Thank you. So, no, I did not serve in the military. However, my husband was in the military. He served 26 years. He was in Desert Storm. He just recently passed away. He was in the burn pits.
Oh, wow.
Um, and so, yes, I'm also a first responder. But back in the day, it's kind of funny. So I come from a long line of first responders. My dad was a cop, and I wanted to go into law enforcement, and they had a height requirement. It's kind of funny because my little 5 foot and half an inch self at that time was not tall enough for being accepted into law enforcement. So I knew I needed to do something. And I always knew at some point, somehow, I was going to serve and protect individuals in any way that I can. That's just my faith. I knew that that was my mission. So I decided to get my counseling degree, and my doctorate is in clinical supervision and higher education. I taught at Columbia State College, actually, for many, many years. Um, so veterans and first responders, they're my heart. I've got a lot of family that are also veterans or who were veterans. Um, Many of them also first responders. So that's just my heart.
Is there something that really binds you personally to care because of your husband's service?
Probably so. Yeah, I would have to say yes. And the reason being is, one, I always knew I was going to be in a role of helping others, and that I met my husband, um, well, April would be our 25th anniversary, but I met him 27 years ago. And, just knowing with what he did, being deployed and staying in after he had been deployed, I knew that there were a lot of, our veterans that were hurting. And so I said, yeah, I'm going to have to go down this road too. So anyone that needs, you know, that serving and protecting and uplifting, that's just something that I've always done that.
So while you didn't serve, you did see the cost, the price of service up close and personal in your daily married life, I would have to think.
Yes. So he and I met right after he had gotten um, out of the Army. Um, Basically, after he spent 8 years there, he rolled over into the National Guards in Nashville. He was stationed at Stark headquarters, and so um, for 19 years after that, I took care of the home front while he was out doing his drills and monthly drills and annual drills and anything else that he was called up to do. And when he was diagnosed with cancer 3 years ago, um, he had colon cancer first, and then January last year, he thought he was having a heart attack, so I took him to the emergency room. That's where we found out he had pancreatic cancer, and he was 100%, service disconnected. And he told me right before he went on to hospice, he said, knowing what I know now, I would do it all over again. And I would support him for that.
The reason I ask some of these questions is a lot of times people don't get the perspective from the wife or the children, and so I think it's important to, shine light on the fact that you all are sometimes are right there with us, and it kind of leads into some of the things we'll talk about during, 22 zero is, spouses are part of the healing process as well. Um, so talking about 22 zero.
Mhm.
How did you get involved with that organization?
Kind of funny. So I was the youth service officer, and bottom line, I've been in the volunteer fire department since 2008, and my assistant fire chief at that time was in the platoon with Dan. Dan is the one who spoke 22-0 into existence, one of the co-founders. They wanted me to go through the training. I told them, nope, I didn't have time. I'm like, I've got enough going on. He convinced my fire chief, and then they kind of sidebarred me one night with a countywide meeting and said, you need to go through the training. So
Now
I
wait a minute,
did it.
hold on. What kind of training are you talking about? Like the full like fire training, that kind of training,
No, for
doctor?
20 for 22-0.
Oh, okay, okay.
So yes, so they wanted because anything that happens, within our fire department, I'm the one who's going to be called. I do have that clinical background, with it being with the families of the firefighters or the firefighters, then the chief is going to call me. And so they asked if I would go through it. They, had been through the process and were totally bought into it. And I told them I would do it to shut them up. Literally, I told them that. Um, and I said the only way that I would be willing to, agree to do it, because for me, I won't put my name with just any organization. I have my faith and my values that I strongly am connected with. And so I just said I will do it, but they're going to have to run me through the process. So I was also a reserve deputy for 5 years. And I had 2 calls at the sheriff's department, and then there were 3 calls at the fire department that, well, I ended up taking Ambien just so I could sleep because of the dreams. And it was funny because my husband Jerome was sitting in the other room. We did the training online and meeting virtually. We were doing it virtually, and Dan ran me through the process, and I came out and we were taking a break, and he looked at me. He said, "Have you been drinking?" I mean, I could immediately feel that shift. And I looked at him and I said, "What?" He said, "I thought you were in class." And I said, "I've been all day long." He said, "Have you been drinking Jack and Coke?" And I'm going, "No, I've not been drinking during class." And he said, "You just look different." And I mean, when I felt that shift, um, that is the best way that I can explain it. That when I felt those 5 incidents that were causing, a lot of just stress and trauma for me, I mean, I had no reaction. Just in thinking about it, that the content was neutral. I didn't have any of those reactions, and it was funny because that night was the first night I went to sleep without Ambien. And when we went back in class the next day, I asked Diane, I said, "What did you do to me?" Like, my husband accused me of drinking during class. I slept without Ambien. And I mean, I slept really hard. And it's just part of the process. And the best way to explain it is when there's an event, a traumatic event, the neural pathways just get stuck and your brain's not able to process it. And my brain was able to process it after Dan ran me through the process.
So one of the things before we get into the process that kind of, struck me differently, looking at the website and reading about, Dan's story and your involvement is you all very clearly say that PTSD is an injury,
Mhm,
not necessarily a psychological problem, but an actual injury,
mhm,
and it can be healed.
mhm,
And that really kind of perked me up because so often you hear the exact opposite, where it's not really an injury in a physiological sense, but
mhm.
it's just leftover trauma that you couldn't process. And I don't doubt the efficacy from, reading and understanding more about how you all work, but kind of break it down for me, Lance Corporal style, why that's so different, because that's really a different take on PTSD
Mhm.
as a whole.
So basically, what happens is, when I was explaining about the event is stuck in the neural pathways, then, basically what happens is when you're not able to process that information and you use or go through the 22-0 protocol, the brain is very, very inept as far as what our brain does. People do not realize how much our brain does, but injuries do heal. If you look at it from the standpoint, if you break your leg or your arm and you go and get it set, get the treatment you need, it's going to heal. Trauma is an injury. Back in, I think it was the early 80s, maybe late 70s, early 80s, Dr. Ockberg was the one who coined post-traumatic stress disorder because they didn't have, um, they didn't know what it was. Back then, it was just considered shell shock. And that's typically what people would relate to with PTS. With what we know and with the brain mapping, we actually have a QEEG machine where we are able to brain map before and after going through the process, and you can see the trauma, but you can also see the healing of it. So Dr. Frank Ockberg has been ever since trying to get it coined to post-traumatic stress injury with APA. The other part of that is Dr. David Hagedorn from Evoke Neuroscience is, understanding as well, and sees, he would do the brain mapping. He sees the before, and then after they go through the process, he'll see after they've gone through the process. And he's actually, there's been a study, and he's working on a study now.
So there is in your website, you have two main focuses: the Trauma Resiliency Protocol and the Emotions Management Process.
Mhm.
And it's my understanding that you can do one or even both of these. And for lack of a better term, doctor, it seems like if a person goes through this, they almost heal themselves. So take me through the emotions management process. Is that what you did first?
So basically what we do is we'll do the trauma protocol first.
Okay.
So we're going to do the trauma protocol. It's based off of neurological linguistic programming.
Oh,
Many
well, I've
people
heard of
have.
that. Yeah.
Yes, okay. So it's based off of that. Once you have gone through the trauma, then we're going to find out what those negative emotions are. The negative emotions are going to be things such as anger, fear, horror, and like shame, guilt. We get a lot of survivor guilt with our military that have served, and any other negative emotion that can be connected with that trauma. And then once we go through the emotions management process, it's releasing and letting go of those negative emotions, because it's kind of cupped and held. If you have anger and rage and like just guilt, people become overcome with those negative emotions, and you're actually doing the work. We're running you through the process, but you are actually doing the work yourself.
So it's very interesting because one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is several times in your treatment protocol on the website and in your documentation and your interviews, you just talk about that you all really don't focus on the actual trauma event. It's not avoided, but it's not the focus. The focus is these things that cause you to feel negative emotions. And then I find it interesting that neuro linguistic programming is used to overcome that, because that's being shown to be more and more powerful as a way to tell yourself that, hey, you're okay. So it's just a very interesting approach to this. And what did you think of all this when you started looking at the treatment program based on your outside clinical experience?
So when I actually went through the process, with those 5 incidents that I had during the training, I knew there was something there, even from a clinical standpoint. So one of the things that we need to know is, the protocols that 220 has, it's non-invasive, it's non-clinical. We are a peer-to-peer program. So we are veterans and first responders that are connecting with other veterans and first responders that are going through the process, in addition to Gold Star families. But when I noticed that, I knew like there was no way anybody could tell me otherwise. I've not been on Ambien since. It was 3 years ago. I still sleep, minus the going through the part with my husband and stuff, that's something totally different. But as far as the trauma, no, those events no longer bother me. And so what happens is, when we actually are working with a veteran or first responder, they're not allowed to talk about the content. And when we're running them through the process, they are going to be able to see and feel that shift. So it's innovative, it's non-clinical, it's non-invasive, but yet it works. I mean, I actually made the comment because we do a pre-assessment and we do a post-assessment. So a pre-assessment includes, and the post-assessment includes the trauma screen, depression screen, anxiety screen.
Okay.
We do that when they come through. So when you see someone score 80, 60 to 80, 80 being the highest on the range, when you see them score 10 and below, after going through the process, 2 to 4 sessions, after they go through that process, that is huge. Even if they scored 70 and were a 60, 50 afterwards, that's still clinically significant because it's a decrease. But our goal is to take it from 10 down to 0,
Okay.
or 10 and below. And then we're going to do a post assessment with them. Same questionnaire, it's standard instruments. And so we're going to actually do those pre and post assessment. Right now, we have Arizona State University has just finished a study. Hopefully, it'll be released in the spring. It's in the final review stage on our first responder data. And then they contacted me. So Dr. McGuire said, hey, I agreed. Originally, we were just doing one study. I'm actually mentoring a combat medic, and he's working on his doctorate. And now we want to do your veteran data. So I have just sent them our veteran data. So when you see, a lot of people don't believe it until they've gone through it and experienced it. But, and even from, looking at it from the educational side, the clinical side, unless I experienced it, I would have most definitely looked back and went, no, I don't think so. And actually, that's what I thought before I went through the training. I said,
So
oh, come on, it's not that easy.
you were skeptical before you went through the
Oh, I was
training.
very skeptical, very
Bec-
skeptical.
Because to be honest with you, doctor, I'm like, wait a minute, you're flipping the entire script for a lot of other entities, well-meaning, that are saying you have to do this, and this to address your PTSD. Like you must, you know, slay the dragon that is your, trauma, and you must face your trauma directly. There's a lot of other, you know, ways and methodologies to that will say you have to do that. Um, this was this was actually not the first one that referred to PTSD as an injury. The first one I came across was people who deal with hyperbaric oxygen therapy,
Hmm.
who will tell me, hey, PTSD we're finding out is an actual, the brain has changed and we kind of change it back. But your way is non-invasive. You basically tell someone or get them to tell themselves that they're okay. What was it like when not 2 or 3 days after, but like a month after, when you had gone through the program? Did you still feel any, did you slide back into to a PTSD state, or were you steady state after you went through the program?
That was 3 years ago, and I still sleep. I can think about those events, and I am not triggering. I don't, the content's there. You can't change the content. The
Okay.
difference is we're disconnecting it so that it's not causing the physiological, emotional reactions and the triggers. That's all we're doing.
So just hypothetically,
Mhm.
you have a veteran and their spouse. And the reason bringing spouses, doctor, is a lot of times I've had spouses tell me, look, I'm just done. I have tried to be the good spouse. I've tried to be supportive. I've tried to, run the household and work and be the caregiver, and I have nothing left. And it might seem cold and cruel, but certainly you understand that, human beings are human beings, and everybody has a limit. So you get that veteran or first responder and their spouse, and you start working with them. What do you see when these people come in front of you? What are you looking for, and what do you see in the situation that says, you know what, we can help them?
You have to want to go through the process. We can't force anybody that we're not going to do that. We've had a lot of individuals submit um, information for someone else, but that other person is not wanting or not receptive to go through the process. They have to want to go through the process. Um, One of the things that we have to understand is everybody's level of trauma, capabilities is going to be different. And so when you have lived with, from a spouse point of view, when you have lived with someone that has trauma from, XYZ, because it's going to look different for everybody. But when you are as a spouse with that veteran, first responder, and it it can cause issues in the family. And it does cause issues in the family because the whole point of what we do is it's not just the veteran or the first responder, it's their spouse, their minor child living in the home to be able to go through the process. They're covered at no cost. The other part of that is we are not going to report to the VA. We are not, if you're a first responder, we are not going to report to your employer. That's not going to happen unless you tell somebody you went through our process. Nobody's going to know about it. We just want the family unit healed. We just want our veterans, our first responders, and the Gold Star families. We want them healed. That's it.
Now, let me go back here a little bit. One thing I found very interesting is that you also serve first responders, and a lot of organizations I talk to only serve veterans or active duty military. What was the reason, the impetus to say, you know what, we need to serve, first responders as well?
Well, one, Dan, who spoke 22-0 into existence, is also retired law enforcement. And it's not just, our veterans are from a first responder perspective. They see a lot and deal with a lot of trauma as well. So, and for the first responders, we consider within that first responder role is going to be law enforcement, fire, paramedics, EMTs, corrections, and 911 dispatchers.
So you have somebody in the program, they go through the program. I guess, have you ever had to work with anybody in their other challenges because of their PTSD? Is there anything else that, keeps them from, being treated by the program, or is it simply a matter of them believing in the process that's really an indicator of whether or not they're going to succeed or not?
No, as long as they are willing to go through the process, we're going to see those numbers drop.
Yeah.
It all they have to do is reach out and contact us, and we, if we don't have a waiting list, you're not going to have to wait 2 months or 3 months or 6 weeks. That's not going to happen. We have the 800 number on our website, but once someone says, hey, I want to go through the process, then we're going to go ahead and get that pre-assessment, assign them that coach, and then they're going to set that time. Those individuals that just, that a lot of people we have found, especially on the military side, they're concerned it's going to affect their rating. But like I said earlier, we're not reporting to the VA, and it's not going to affect that. All we want is, our mission folks healed. That's it.
Well, that's a huge part of it. It is a lot of law enforcement um, and first responders are very apprehensive. I've been told to my face, like, look, I want to get this help. The minute I raise my hand and tell my manager that I need help, my career is done.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very interesting approach that you're not reporting to the VA or, their employer.
Right.
Um,
And again, it just goes back to we just want them healed. That's it.
yeah.
We just want them to feel the healing. Anyone that puts on a uniform, military, the first responder, they put on a uniform for a greater purpose. It's above themselves. It's to serve and protect. And that all we want at 22-0 is for them to heal. That is it.
As a doctor, one thing that I've been told about medicine is you get used to not being able to save everyone. But
Mhm.
in this case, you get to see people change their lives. From a professional, personal level, Dr. Arnell, what's that like when you talk to somebody who's definitely reaching out for help, they're desperate, they've lost hope, and then you talk to them a week, a month, 6 months later, and their lives are completely changed. What does that do for you?
Um, I mean, it's rewarding. It's humbling just because they've gotten their life back. You know, um, it's not about anything in particular that I do. Just kind of remove me from it. They're doing the work. We run the process on them, but they're doing the work. But ultimately, when you see that change and working with somebody, you're going to see that change immediately. Um, But ultimately, when you see that change and you're able to see that family dynamic heal, that's just so rewarding.
Well, how can people get in touch with your organization to, check out your programs or even support what you're doing?
They can go to our website. It's 220, so it's 22zero.org. We've got the Healing the Heroes of 9/11 documentary on there. Basically, they went to New York, worked with first responders who were there on 9/11 in New York and at the Pentagon. And that's what the documentary is about. You can also, on the website, look at the top right-hand side of the website, and it's got contact.
I
So
see
what you
it.
would do, yeah, what you would do is you would fill that information out. It automatically comes directly to me. It comes directly to Trisha. Trisha is our amazing social worker. Um, so what happens is once we get it, we'll reach out and schedule a time to get that pre-assessment done and get you connected with a peer coach.
I
As
watched, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, and I was gonna say the 800 number, the 800-221-9154 is also on the website. So you can also do the email gethealed@220.org.
I will have the website link, the phone number, and any other social media link in the Oscar Mike Radio show post. Doctor, I got a chance to, I didn't get to see all of it, but I watched part of the 9/11 documentary with Johnny Walker and his wife and their story. And I was blown away to hear what, you know, that hero went through. And then, how you all came in and changed that life. Really, opened my eyes to a whole different pathway to heal from PTSD. Um, you're established now. You've been around now for 3 years. There's a lot of people supporting what you're doing. What do you think is next for 22
So first off, I've been around, 220's been around 6 years in April of this year. It's been in operation for 6 years. My goal for 2024, along with all of us at 220, is, heal more heroes, um, make sure that we're reaching out and, connecting, be it podcast or, stories, interviews, whatever, just to get the word out. But ultimately, what we want to do is we want to heal more heroes. Last year, we had between January and the end of December, we had almost 900 that came through our process. Uh, and so I think we're at 100 and something as of this morning. There was 130, 140, I believe, that have already reached out to us. My goal is every year to go above and beyond what number we have served so that I know that there are more that are being healed and that are getting that healing that they deserve.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, again, doctor, it was just a different approach to PTSD healing. And then what, the number two item that really stuck out to me is kind of like HBOT therapy. This therapy is predicated on the notional that, hey, it's an injury, and that you, the person, can heal yourself if you follow the process. And then you have the different levels of people who can support you through the process. So that's very interesting how you can come through the program and then give back to the program if you want to, and share that going forward. Um, I'm really interested to see what's going next, and I'm glad this is out there because not everybody responds to things in the same way.
Right.
So, um, closing this out, if we can heal ourselves, I guess my question to close us out is, if we can truly heal ourselves, then why does it seem so hard to turn this on and say, you know what, I truly am okay? Because it seems like a lot of times, not just for this, but for other things, is that we truly are our own limit to what we can do in life.
That is true. I think at some point in time, everyone has kind of experienced that.
Yeah.
But the other part of that is knowing that you are worth that healing and you are worth having someone to be able to help guide you through that process. Like I said earlier, it's non-invasive, it's non-clinical. You're not allowed to talk about the content of that trauma. That protects you, that protects my coaches. You are so worth having that healing and understanding and kind of flipping it around and saying, yes, I do deserve to have that healing.
Well, just to expand that a little bit, because sometimes you can get pretty comfortable being in pain.
Hmm.
You,
Yeah.
being in pain can become very familiar, and so leaving that behind to not be in pain can be very weird. It can be
Hmm.
hard to let go.
Yeah.
Eh,
But
yeah,
imagine, but what would it look like if all of our first responders, their spouse, their minor child living in the home, and our Gold Star families were healed of that trauma? They were living life the way that they envision it to be, where they're not stuck with that pain, the negative emotions, that trauma. Imagine how this world would look
it'd be pretty exciting. I mean,
if they were
first of
healed.
all, I'm very empathetic to the fact they went through the pain in the first place, absolutely. But just to be able to live life again on your terms, who knows what would happen? It'd have to be exciting to see.
It would be huge.
Well, doctor, I just want to thank you for sharing so openly and candidly with me and with people watching and listening to this program. Any kind of healing interests me, and I hope somebody will take advantage of this who's suffering and heal themselves. I really do. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you, for having me. But remember, we're not going to report it to the VA. We're not going to report it to your employer. All we want is for you to heal. That's it.
That's it. So, I mean, tongue in cheek, there's no shots.
No shots. No
Okay.
shot.
Yeah, that was now huge sigh of
No,
relief there, doc. So no shots, no reporting, no nothing. It's truly private within the organization and your own desire to get well. So I think that's, again, you have no excuse. You have the information in the show post. Please reach out and thank you. Again, my name is Travis with Oscar Mike Radio. So I'm joined by Dr. Pam Arnell with 220. You have the link in the Oscar Mike Radio show post. Please consider reaching out if you feel you need to. And please, please be well. Thank you.
Remember on to teach is our mission. We care about it and we do it every day. But I think there are things that just hit you and give you a reason to go on. The theme for our 2024 for Reach Across America is Live with Purpose. It just seemed to fit in with the vows of the REAP, the 10 attributes that we feel represent our United States military. I thought, what a great opportunity to put those two things together and show our kids through how we act some of the things that can make their lives better, their communities better, and by doing that, the country better. For me, Live with Purpose, I think, it's a mindset. Set some guidelines and then go out and purposefully make life different, make a change. It's an opportunity to set an example.
Thank you for listening and watching Oscar Mike Radio, where our active duty service members and veterans are in action and the mission is in flight. Oscar Mike Radio is an oversized load Co-Sinister One production. If you are a veteran or know a veteran who needs help, please dial 988 and press 1 for the Veterans Crisis Line.